I caught my sister trying to marry my husband. My sister always hated me, but she finally went too far when she drunkenly confessed her love to my husband and tried to steal him. So, I decided to teach her a hard lesson with an elaborate wedding prank caught on camera. My name is Lila, 30fem, and I've been married to Victor, 32m, for 3 years now. We actually go way back. We first met in high school, lost touch after graduation, but reconnected a few years later. From the moment we started dating again, it felt right. We've been happily married since, and I really thought everything in my personal life had finally clicked into place. Of course, not everyone was thrilled about our marriage. My older sister, Clara, 32m, never warmed up to us. We went to the same high school, and back then, Clara had a huge crush on Victor. But as far as I know, he never reciprocated. He even told me a few months into our relationship that he had no clue she ever liked him. Clara didn't come to our wedding and stopped talking to me as soon as I announced my engagement, which honestly was fine. She's always seemed to dislike me for reasons I've never really understood. It wasn't one of those classic golden child and overlooked sibling dynamics. Our parents, in fact, treated us entirely equally. I wasn't the smarter, sportier, or prettier one. We looked alike, performed similarly in academics and athletics, and yet she always pushed me away. By the time adulthood rolled around, I had made peace with the chilly distance between us. Family events? Awkward hellos at best, if any. Our relatives knew the score and stayed out of it. But about 6 months ago, she crossed a pretty serious line. Victor was at home with me when he got an obviously inebriated phone call from Clara. And I mean, truly, gloriously tipsy, because she proceeded to go on a rant about how he'd picked the wrong sister and that she'd make a much better wife than me. What she didn't know was that Victor had her on speaker and I was right there, struggling not to laugh at the sheer absurdity of it. She eventually declared she'd marry Victor some way or another, even volunteered to be his mistress if she had to. I couldn't believe how low she'd stoop. I'll admit, part of me found it outrageous and almost pathetic, but mostly I was steamed. What had I ever done to deserve this? So I decided if she wanted to mess with me, I'd play along and see how far she was willing to go. I convinced Victor to flirt a bit with her over text, give her false hope. Honestly, it wasn't kind, but after years of petty grievances, I thought maybe it was needed. Victor messaged her, inviting her over to get married, and she jumped at the opportunity, so excited you'd think she'd won the lottery. The next day, Victor and I set up a hidden camera in our living room. I even decorated the room, giving it a dreamy, wedding-ready vibe. When Clara arrived, I hid out in the next room and watched the entire ridiculous scene play out via the camera feed. She attempted to flirt and seduce Victor, while he tried his best to play along, but stay awkwardly stiff. They traded silly mock vows and fake rings, and at the end, Victor told her to leave and keep everything secret until it was safe to tell people. He didn't even kiss her, but Clara seemed oblivious that anything was off. After she left, Victor and I watched the footage and howled. The whole thing was so delusional, I almost pitied her. Imagine hating your own sibling so much you'd gladly destroy their marriage just for revenge. But Victor only has eyes for me. Her little stunt couldn't change that. At first, we considered sending the video to our parents right away, but figured we'd save it for the right moment. If she tried anything again, we'd show them so they'd know who she really was, someone who'd chase her sister's husband out of nothing but spite. For some context, my parents weren't exactly blind to Clara's troubles, but they were always a little too supportive, even indulging her, in my opinion. They paid for her vacation to Italy a few months before my wedding, claiming she was so shaken by my engagement that she needed to get away. That annoyed me. I didn't want them pitying her, but at the time, they were also covering a big chunk of my wedding venue costs, so I didn't feel like I could complain. After the wedding, while we were on our honeymoon, they let Clara stay with them because she said she was lonely. I hated how she constantly mined my marriage for sympathy, but my hands were tied. I needed my parents to see through her facade. Still, we decided it wasn't worth showing my parents the video over a single drunken phone call. They'd probably just say we were as bad as her, so we'd wait until she made a bigger move. That's exactly what happened a few days ago. Clara, out of nowhere, publicly announced that she'd secretly been married to Victor for half a year and was now ready to come forward. She told everyone she was giving me just 1 day to leave the house and requested all my jewelry, since, as Victor's true wife, she now owned everything that used to be mine. Suddenly, Victor and I were bombarded with texts and calls from confused, gossiping relatives. Since their fake wedding, Clara kept texting Victor, telling him she loved him and asking when they'd finally reveal their relationship. Victor only replied maybe once a month, always pushing her off, saying it wasn't the right time. The last message she sent was 3 weeks ago. Guess she got tired of waiting. It was wild that she'd go so far, but I'd always known this might happen. She was bound to do something over the top eventually. By then, Victor decided to call Clara. He even recorded their call for extra evidence. When he passed the phone to me, she still didn't seem to realize anything was amiss. She claimed no amount of begging would change reality, and that I should just get used to having nothing. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. I finally told her the real story of what had happened that wedding day, but she didn't believe me. She demanded to talk to her husband, so I handed Victor the phone, and he spent 10 minutes convincing her the ceremony was a sham and she'd been fooled. I'll never understand how she fell for it. There was no priest, no marriage paperwork, and her husband barely spoke to her outside of the occasional monthly text. But Clara, wrapped in her own fantasy, wouldn't see the truth until it hit her square in the face. When it finally did, she lost it, screaming at Victor and me for ruining her reputation and life, calling us evil, accusing us of being sadistic. She sobbed, blaming me for destroying her, but honestly, she destroyed herself. Afterward, I sent my parents the video and explained everything that had gone on behind the scenes, since their phones were blowing up with calls about Clara's insane post and they weren't really on social media. Victor and I laid it all out. Clara was willing to ruin my marriage just to get what she wanted. We staged the plot to catch her in the act. We hoped this would wake my parents up, but all my parents focused on was how cruel Victor and I had been in orchestrating such a mean prank for no reason. They said they were embarrassed by the behavior of their grown daughters and threatened to cut us out of their will unless we grew up and apologized to each other publicly. I got into a heated argument with them. How was it fair to ask me to apologize to someone trying to snatch my entire life away? Sure, my retaliation was over the top, but that didn't magically make what Clara did any less awful. My parents were stuck on the psychological cruelty we'd inflicted and argued that we should have just blocked Clara after her drunken call and told them immediately instead of setting her up to appear as a public fool. They thought both sides needed to seriously introspect. My mom said Clara might be jealous, but I was no better for resorting to psychotic retaliation as an adult. I can't lie, that stung. It's been 2 days, and I still can't stop thinking about what she said. Victor thinks my parents were way too harsh, but I honestly don't know what to feel. So, Reddit, AITA, for making my sister believe my husband loved her for 6 months just to teach her a lesson. Update 1. Hey everyone, so I know I messed up. I really do. I appreciate everyone who pointed it out, and the hate is fully deserved. Looking at it now, what I did was cruel and unnecessary. Nothing justifies what I put Clara through. I guess, writing the post, I only now see how much I must have started hating her myself, almost without realizing it. Forcing my parents to cut her off wasn't right, and from where I stand now, it just looks childish and vindictive. I realize me should have just blocked her, told my parents right then, and moved on. There's more to Clara's story than I knew. My parents reached out a few days after everything blew up to tell me some things they'd kept from me. I feel sick about it now. Clara is actually in rehab right now. She's been battling a severe alcohol addiction all along, which I never knew. I don't blame myself for the addiction itself, but I have to admit I probably triggered a relapse through my actions. 6 months ago, she'd already had a major relapse, and my parents had been constantly watching out for her ever since so she wouldn't slip again. Turns out, the vacation trips I so resented my parents for funding were actually stints in rehab. Their cover for why Clara wasn't present at holidays or events. Since we stopped speaking after she started college, I just had no way of knowing any of this. My parents admit, in hindsight, that they probably should have told me the real reason for Clara's disappearances. Their intention was to protect her privacy and avoid more drama. But in the end, all these secrets just blew up in everyone's faces. All of us lost compassion for each other and forgot that even our worst enemies are human beings. I genuinely regret what happened. I plan to visit Clara in person as soon as she's well enough, to apologize face to face. There's still a lot of family gossip, but I ignore it now. I only hope that Clara recovers, especially since my parents told me she was found passed out at home this time, instead of reaching out for help. I hate that things fell apart this badly, and I'm just so sorry for everything. Maybe putting it out into the world, Clara will somehow know I mean it. Update 2. I finally visited Clara today. It was honestly hard to face her. She was still looking really unwell, clearly in the thick of rehab and recovery. Even so, she agreed to see me. It was awkward at first. After all, we'd barely been family for years, just quiet hostility between us, but I owned up. I apologized for the cruel, soap opera-style stunt, for letting my own hatred push me to such extremes. Clara actually apologized back. She admitted she'd always felt threatened by me. Ever since I was born, she internalized this fear that I'd become her rival. She'd overcompensate by competing for our parents' attention, for Victor, everything. The wedding stunt actually made her feel like she'd finally won, which is so sad in hindsight. But she says she's done competing. She wants a fresh start. We're not suddenly close friends, but it's a new beginning. All I can say is I'm grateful for another chance. I would have hated myself forever if things ended badly. Now, I can start forgiving myself. Update 3. Just wanted to update everyone. Victor and I are absolutely still together. No idea why some people thought otherwise. Maybe because I hadn't mentioned him lately. Victor knows everything about what happened with Clara, and he reached out to apologize to her as well. Clara, for her part, declined to meet him, but did say she'd forgiven him. Victor felt terribly guilty about the whole thing too. He was just being a loyal husband, but it's not an excuse for how things turned out. Also, I don't blame my parents for everything. Yes, they could have handled this differently, but their hearts were in the right place. Keeping Clara's addiction a secret didn't help, but with all the bitterness between us, they must have thought sharing that detail would solve nothing. I know some of you see Clara as the only villain, but honestly, we both screwed up. If I get a chance to repair our family, I'm going to take it, even if it means forgiving her. Update 4. Everyone, it's now been a year since I first got this all off my chest, and honestly, things are so much better. A lot of you warned me that Clara might backstab me again, or that my parents would become totally toxic. Others said that I was the common problem. In the end, none of those fears came true, and I'm grateful for that. Clara and I have made a real effort to reconnect and have some sort of relationship. We're not best friends, but we go for coffee every few months and are genuinely civil at family events now, which to our relatives was pure shock. We're just done fighting. Neither of us wants to waste time on old rivalries. Clara's moving for a new job soon, maybe a little risky given her past, but our parents will keep an eye out and both Victor and I will help if needed. It finally feels like I have a normal family, and I never would have expected that. But sometimes, things really can heal. Maybe someday Clara and I will become truly close. Anything's possible now. And the best news ever? Victor and I found out a few weeks ago we're expecting our first child. We announced it to our families on a video call, and Clara genuinely looked happy for us. She even sent flowers to congratulate me the next day. Life's felt better lately, now that it's not fueled by bitterness and anger. I'm honestly just looking forward to parenthood, and finally, I'm hopeful for the future. That brings this story to a close. It's clear that unresolved resentment between siblings can escalate out of control, especially when secrets and misunderstandings pile up over time. Sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom and being brutally honest with yourself and others for real change to happen in a family. Here is a question for you. Have you ever experienced sibling rivalry or family drama that went too far? What would you have done differently in OP's place?